Hello?
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes.
I think the line will pick up speed in a minute. Is my voice coming out okay to you? Can you see me?
Yes. Perfect.
Perfect. So I can see you very well too. Hi. I'm sorry we have to do it this way. I'd much rather be with you, but 1,000 kilometers is too much for once a week. Coming there and coming back. So today we have to do it this way.
But you promised to come, huh?
Yes, I will. Listen, I love Varna and the people there are the best. So, all of you. So, how is everything? I didn't hear you very well, but that's okay. I see somebody's taking a picture, right?
At 2 o'clock you will be taking pictures.
Well, somebody already made a snap. I can see when I can see it on my screen when they do things from over there.
That is the assistant, the technical assistant, who is controlling everything.
Very good. Okay, is my voice coming okay out there?
Very good.
Okay, so we can start because today we have a very long day in terms of the material, because I'm planning to cover most of the cardiac physiology, at least up to the point where we have to talk about vessels and the different pathologies. But you're going to get a lot of material, and I tried to put it in such a way that it is understandable easily. So, any questions before we start?
I have one question. Here we have your slides from the PowerPoint. Nadia took them, and we have a big screen here to show them if they cannot see properly from there.
It's okay. So, let me resolve this immediately. We are going to show you the first slide.
Okay.
How do you see it?
Where?
Anything.
You didn't get anything?
Now?
Bravo, bravo.
Το δικό τους? Okay, let me tell you what's the situation. You have somebody took a snapshot from there, and he has that capability open. He has to close it so I can control it from here, because otherwise we're going to be a little bit in disarrangement. Can you tell your technician to get the snapshot facility out? Because the only thing I see myself twice. This is how I know you're taking snapshots. See, technology allows me to monitor you. Very good. So, now can you see the screen? What's he doing with the snapshot? Tell him to stop taking snapshots.
He's trying to stop it.
Well, I hope he does. He's taking another one. Anyway, you have to bear with me for a few minutes. We'd rather set it right from the beginning. It will go fairly smoothly.
Yeah.
Normally, you see, I see you twice. I should see myself in once.
George, we're going to dial you up once again. So now we stop.
Θα κάνουμε dial-up από την αρχή. Καλά κάνουμε.
Καταλάβατε τι έγινε.
Το
Μικρό, πρέπει να βλέπουμε κι εμείς σε μικρό.
Μα το καταλαβαίνω. Το
Για να
καταλαβαίνω,
καταλαβαίνουμε.
παιδιά. Δεν χρειάζεται να μου το
Απλώς μπερδευτήκανε τώρα με το snapshot.
από εδώ, εγώ θα το αλλάζω από εδώ, ναι.
Με το page up, page down, εμείς...
Είμαστε πρώτοι. Κάτσε, όχι έτσι, γιατί
Καλύτερα από εκεί.
έχουμε πρόβλημα από εδώ. Το βάλουμε από εδώ.
Τα media που είπαν ότι θα είναι από εκεί, πού είναι?
Στις
Στις 2 η ώρα θα είναι το επίσημο του.
Α, στις 2 θα είναι.
Κάνουμε τώρα.
Ό,τι
Γι' αυτό
το-
πάμε με ένα κανάλι τώρα. Στις 2 θα έχουμε.
Α, ωραία. Εμείς πάντως είτε με 2 είτε με 3. Το πρώτο αρκεί και τα άλλα είναι μετά συνδεδεμένα μεταξύ τους, οπότε δεν χρειάζεται να πατήσουν να βάλουν.
Κανένα πρόβλημα. Δεν υπάρχει πρόβλημα.
Πάλι θα καλέσουν αυτοί και μετά.
Αυτοί θα καλέσουν. Αν χρειάζεται να καλέσω εγώ, θα καλέσω εγώ. Δεν είναι πρόβλημα αυτό. Έχω budget στην Επιτροπή Ερευνών για αυτά. Τώρα τα κάνανε αυτοί χάκια και ψάχνονται τώρα.
Στα καλά καθούμενα snapshot.
Είναι τώρα οι, ξέρεις, δεν βαριέσαι, εντάξει, δεν έχουμε.
Υπάρχει πρόβλημα, εντάξει. Καλά και θα τους κάνετε τόσο ώρες παρουσίαση.
Παιδιά, τι να κάνω, προτιμώ να το κάνω από εδώ παρά να πάω 1000 χιλιόμετρα
Ναι, αυτό
και
το
ξέρεις το
καταλαβαίνω.
χειρότερο δεν είναι τα 1000 χιλιόμετρα. Όλο το σημείο, όλο το εξάμηνο τους κάνω εγώ. Από εδώ το...
Θα σας δείξω σας πάλι.
Πάλι εμένα, ναι.
Πρέπει να έχουν και μια ιδέα του τι τους στέλνουμε.
Βγάλτε το μούτ από εκεί.
Α, ναι.
Hello now.
Seeing in video sometimes we lost connection. Okay, sorry.
Are we okay now? Yes, I can see you perfectly now. Well, good morning again. Now let's not take any more snapshots and let's start. Okay, let me first show you the first screen so you decide. Can you read my slides?
Yes.
Are they clear?
Yes.
Okay, the only thing I changed on the slide is the title of the lectures, nothing else. So, okay. As I said, this is a very interesting, a very nice part of physiology, and we're getting into the real things now. Up to now, we talked about general physiology, which is the building blocks of the, rather the function of the building blocks of the human body. Now we are going to go into system physiology because we examine traditionally, and I don't know for how many more years we'll be doing this, but we are going to start examining things from the standpoint of function. And this means that we have to look at a system. So we have a number of systems, as you very well know, because I'm sure that you have all looked into your syllabus. So to name a few, we have the cardiovascular. Traditionally, we start from that because when your heart stops, you die within the next 10 minutes. That is, you go unconscious within a few seconds, and past 5 minutes without your heart working, your brain is irreversibly damaged, and at 10 minutes there is nothing you can do. The decay process already starts. So this is why we studied it first, but it's no more important than all the other systems, because the same thing will happen to you if you have a renal failure and you don't do anything about it. The same thing that will happen with any system, really. So we have the cardiovascular system, we have the respiratory system, we have the urinary system, or and the digestive tract, and so on and so forth, and all these are integrated by the nervous system and the endocrine system. So, enough about these generalities. Let's go to the next slide, which I always like to remind you where you can find me. You have taken that down, you have seen it, so I will not spend any time on that, and go into the lectures themselves, the real stuff. The title that I have chosen about the circuitry of the cardiovascular system has been chosen because this is how your syllabus really approaches the subject of the cardiovascular system, and indeed the cardiovascular system is a big circuit. It is, if you want to look at it that way, the high pressure piping of our body. Now, what I mean by high pressure piping is the same thing as you have in a city where the high pressure piping brings clear water into your homes. And you know that without clear water, very few things can happen in a modern city. And exactly like an aggregation of people or a city, our body has a lot, really a lot of piping. Any questions? No. Okay. When I say a lot of piping, let me give you a rule of the thumb as to how you estimate it. We normally say that when you gain 1 pound of weight, you add to your pipes 30 miles. Okay? So if you go from there, you can easily calculate that for a 75 kilogram or 170 pound male, for example, or female, doesn't matter, the length of the vessels in their body is about 4,000 miles. Do the calculations, I may be off by a few hundred miles, but in reality I'm not even away by by half an order of magnitude, let alone a whole order of magnitude. So this tells you how many pipes you have in the body, and we have to keep the pressure in this right at every place so that we can have the materials that we are sending to every part of our body, that is oxygen or nutritional materials or hormones or whatever else, go there, and at the same time take away from the tissues the materials that the tissues don't need anymore. Okay? So, before we start with the cardiac function, which is the central part of the cardiovascular system, and it is the driving force behind the whole pressure system, let's see what we already know about the heart, starting from general physiology. Okay, so what we know about the heart is first that it is composed of excitable cells. In the last few lectures, we had the chance to talk about what excitable cells mean, to talk about their action potentials, to talk about the mechanisms by which they interact, whether it's neurons that they release neurotransmitter at their very end, or it is muscles that contract in one way or the other, skeletal muscles, cardiac muscles, smooth muscles, and so on and so forth, and we have been through the mechanism this is happening with. So we can say that the cardiac cells are contractile. Okay? So the other thing that we said is that cardiac cells resemble the striated muscle cells. Okay, and they resemble because they have pretty much the same mechanism that striated muscle has in terms of contracting. Oops, there we go. They have, in other words, pretty much the same contractile apparatus. If you recall, we had said at that time that they have a much less developed sarcoplasmic reticulum and that they depend on external calcium for their contractility, and not only in the calcium that is stored in their sarcoplasmic reticulum. This was the difference, the main difference that we said that they have from the regular striated muscle. We also have seen a few other things that we discussed about, and those things was that, first of all, their action potential. You will recall that we had said that the action potential in those cells is the combination of 3 ionic species. If you recall, we had said that it is not only sodium and potassium that are responsible for the action potentials in the cardiac cells, but also calcium. And if you recall also, I had told you that calcium utilizes almost, at least 5 different channels of different velocities and different time courses and different time instances in which they enter into the process to control the potassium movement. This, together with the differences in the channels for sodium and potassium, give us a very strange looking in terms of neuron cells, but I shouldn't say strange, but I should say a very special looking action potential, which lasts approximately 200 milliseconds, 250 milliseconds, and it is shown to us, it presents to us with a very characteristic plateau. Now, if we go into the events that lead, I hope you can see this slide. It's a little bit faded because it was taken from a book that had already suffered a little bit. But if you look at this slide, by the way, for those of you that are interested in where I got those diagrams from, this is the Laura Lee Sherwood book. Hello, can you listen?
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, we have your slides here too, so don't worry about...
Putting it
No,
up.
I do not worry. Listen, I do not worry. It's not that I worry, but you know, since we talk about this thing, I think that you know, it is natural for me to ask you, because on my screen sometimes they don't look as good as I would like to. Okay?
But we have your slides here too.
There's someone projecting them for us instead of the ones that you're showing.
That's very beautiful. So you are fully covered, right?
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So now the action potential, as you'll see, it travels down the cardiac contractile cell the same way that we said that it travels down. So you can see my slides on the other screen, I take it? Right now? Okay, so I don't have to...
You just have to tell the person to change the slide because she's doing it from here.
I
She
see.
has your...
Okay, now there should be a slide that has a diagram with boxes, with a green box on. Okay, so I will not put my slide on, since you can see it both ways, so that we can discuss. Okay, I like to see you, and you to also see me once in a while. Okay, not when I scratch my nose, but in general. So. We said that the action potential will travel down the cardiac cell, the cardiac contractile cell, exactly the same way that it will travel down a regular striated muscle cell, and it will also go down the T tubules, which we said that although the sarcoplasmic reticulum is not very well developed, it doesn't mean that there are no T tubules. All right. So over there we have now two events that take place almost simultaneously. First of all, we have the release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, exactly the same type of mechanism that we had seen to take place when we talked about striated muscle. If you recall this, what I tried to tell you, to give you an idea that it looks like corks that you pull out of the bottle. Remember that? Yes, you remember. Okay. At the same time, though, calcium enters from the surface membrane from the outside to the inside. So we have two sources of calcium. and this increases the cytosolic calcium, that is the calcium inside the cytosol of the cell, or if you are interested in the sarcoplasmic calcium, although this is not a good term to use, put it in quotation marks in your notes, because if you put it down to most people, only physiologists will understand you, not regular doctors. Okay, so we put this on the side. What I'm trying to say is that the potassium inside the calcium inside the cell raises. So this immediately goes in the troponin-tropomyosin system, which is exactly the same as in the case of the striated muscle. And once the active sites and the actin are released, then we have the cross-bridge cycling phenomena. If you recall this four-step cycle from the striated muscle situation, it is exactly the same thing, and we have the filament sliding and, of course, the muscle contracting. So this is the situation with the cardiac cell. The difference is really up in the two parallel channels that you have for calcium entry into the cell. Any questions up to here? No. Okay. Did I hear somebody saying something about channels?
I didn't hear what channels you said.
Okay, we said we have two types of calcium channels. Channels that are, excuse me, I backtrack a little bit. Two types of calcium, two locations for calcium channels. Channels that allow calcium to pass from the sarcoplasmic reticulum into the sarcoplasm or the cytoplasm. It's the same thing. And channels that allow calcium to pass from the outside of the cell to the inside. So this is the two branches that you see in your diagram up on top. Okay? Then from that point on, the process is the same as with regular striated muscle cell. The only difference is that these cells are much, much smaller. Keep in mind, we had talked that the striated muscle cells are aggregations of many, many cells that have taken their membranes that join them apart, and they have become one cell. This is why a striated muscle cell has a lot of nuclei. The cardiac muscle cell doesn't have that many nuclei. Actually, rarely it has more than one or two. Okay? So they are very small cells by comparison. Is that understood?
Yep.
But other than that, all the other stuff is pretty much the same. So let's go back to the action potential, which you have there, and let's review it a little bit to a little bit more detail than we did up to now. We have a resting potential, which is about 90 millivolts, minus 90 millivolts. And when we jolt the cell in one way or the other, I mean, we can do it electrically, and actually these cells in real life do get jolted in the cases where you are trying to cardio-convert, as we say, someone. In other words, you have heard the cases where people fall down of sudden death in the middle of the street, and you see these paramedics come with two paddles that they put across their chest, and they give a big jolt, about 400 joules. Okay? Well, what they do is this is called the cardioconversion. You convert the cardiac rhythm, and in order to do it, you have to depolarize practically all the cells at the same time. So you put the heart on a refractory period, so to speak. Okay? So to do this, we have to give a jolt, and a jolt has to be only about 20 millivolt per cell. Okay? In each cell, in other words, you have to displace the resting membrane potential 20 millivolts positive before an action potential ensues. And the first thing that will happen, you'll see there on the left side of the diagram, it says that the sodium goes in fast. That is the fast sodium channels that we recall from our discussion of general physiology. Anybody wants to ask any question about the channel? I'll answer you. Look back at your notes about the nerve. They behave pretty much the same way as the neuron. Are we clear on that? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So once you reach the peak, once you reach the peak, you will see that the conductivity over here on my diagram you see P, which means permeability. But for ions, permeability and conductivity are two sides of the same coin, okay? So you see the permeability of sodium, that is the sodium channel closing, and you see that decreasing. While at the same time, the permeability or the conductivity for calcium is increasing, okay? And this creates the plateau, where you see the plateau that we say that the calcium comes in as in a slow phase. In other words, first it increases very fast and then starts being in a slow, I mean, the channels start closing little by little, but there are sufficient enough of them open to keep the membrane potential to close to the calcium equilibrium potential. I will refer you back to the Hodgkin, Katz, and Goldman standard steady field equation. Remember the one with the many G's and the many E's? Do you remember that equation? The Goldman equation? Okay. So what it means is the G, the conductivity that is in the Goldman equation, has gone up very high for calcium, and this is why the membrane potential stays at the calcium equilibrium potential or close to it. Okay? So at the end of the action potential, about 200 milliseconds later from the start, we have a decrease in the calcium permeability and a very fast increase in a very large increase, I should say, in the potassium permeability, which tends to restore things close to the equilibrium potential for potassium, which is close to the resting potential of the cell. So we said that this particular action potential is very important. Why? Because if you recall from striated muscle, we had said that the length of the tension curve, in other words, the time that it takes for the channels of calcium on the sarcoplasmic reticulum and on the outside to open and close and allow the contraction to happen is about the same as the action potential. Therefore, you have no chance to produce the phenomenon of tetanus. And I think that last time I put you a separate diagram on the board where we had demonstrated that. And it looked very much like this diagram, okay? But in my diagram, so that there is no source of confusion, because many of you are going to call me and say that on the diagram that I put on the board last week, the contractile response was finishing before the action potential, and here you see a tail going past the action potential. Am I correct? Okay. Let me tell you that this is a matter, not a matter of contention. Is each one of us that draws diagrams draws it in the way that is most explanatory. So either me or Sherwood, we have taken a little bit of liberty on putting the end of the contractile period either before or after the actual end of the action potential. So don't panic by this. Both diagrams mean exactly the same thing. Are we clear on that? Yeah. You recall what diagram I'm referring to, right?
Yeah.
The one that I drew on the board last time myself. I drew it with my own hand. and I had put in the end of the curve inside the action potential rather than a little bit outside as you see it here. You recall that? Don't let that confuse you, right? Both mean the same thing, that you cannot really produce a second phenomenon before the new action potential. Are we clear? Yes or no? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I need some feedback. At least in the class I can see your grimaces much closer and I feel much closer. Now, excuse me, I'm away, but I really want to achieve a good level of interaction with you. By the way, let's take a short break from the slides. How is the course coming through? Is this okay, or are you in a terrible distress over there?
No, it's coming through okay.
Is it coming through?
Yeah.
Great.
It's really good.
You don't have any problem with me being so far away? Well, at least you cannot throw anything at me, right? Well, cheers. I'll have a glass of water before I continue. So, any questions up to this point? See, I see that other people drink water too. Good, good. Any questions? Okay, let's go because we have a lot of important things to talk about today. Whenever you're getting overloaded by information, please stop me. Today is a very tightly packed lecture, so feel free to stop me. There is plenty of time. We have one session more to go between this and blood, so we have plenty of time to finish everything. Don't panic. Okay, so let's go back what we know about the heart. A few things that I did refer to when I talked to you, but now I'm sure that people in histology have, or if you have reached that point, either they have told you or they will tell you. Now, from histology, if you recall, we had said that the cardiac cells make close contact with each other at the site of what we call, and you see that circled, intercalated discs. You recall that? Have you seen it in histology, first of all?
Not yet, no.
Not yet. But you recall when we talked about the intercalated discs sometime in the previous lectures, where we said that this is a place where the membranes of two cells come very close to each other and they intermingle, and holes are open that allow the cytoplasm of one to communicate to the cytoplasm of the other. And we had talked about the Fantastic Voyage movie, only this time intracellularly, that you could go from one place of the heart to the other without ever getting out of the heart. You recall that? Do you?
Yes.
I guess my jokes were not that good that time. Okay. So what you see over here, you see the intercalated disc. And this is the point where the two cells communicate electrically. Okay? Remember, electrically, which means that the cytoplasm comes together. And in effect, there is a little diagram that I tried to draw here. It's not a very good one, but you should see at least how I draw. For posterity, I put it on the CD. And what I have here, I have tried to draw two cells and schematize how the bridge of cytoplasm connects one with the other, okay? You see it right in the middle there of the diagram. It's not very good, but I guess it will do. I'll send you photocopies of that through a fax if you want. Great art should always, circulate. So, this is about how, schematically always, the heart should look. Many, many cells. I have tried to put in red the nuclei of each cell there. And I have many, many cells that communicate with cytoplasmic bridges with one with the other, okay? This doesn't mean that all of them, you know, communicate back and forth in every possible way. There is directionality in the heart, but this diagram shows you pretty much what I mean by a syncytium, which is the Latin word. You're going to learn some Latin here. The syncytium is many cells together. It's half Latin and half Greek, in effect. And what we mean is that the interior of the cells communicates, although the cells have only small bridges between them, so that they can be considered separate cells at the same time. So, and what you see here is you would see how one could traverse the heart, whether with a current of ions or whatever you want to consider transversing from one cell to the other. Through the cytoplasmic bridges, you can have the excitation go many ways from inside the cell to the other. Actually, the excitation does not walk like this in a path, okay, you recall that, but a more realistic diagram would have been something like this. Well, excuse me, I'll show you further down the diagram about how the field goes, but what I like to show you here is to show you how an intercalated disc is schematized, okay? There is the plasma membrane that joins the two cells together, and then you can see this is a desmosome. A desmosome is in effect a protein that binds from one cell to the other and ties the two membranes together. And down below you see the little holes and a green arrow which says action potential. What it means is the field lines of the current that go through there. It's not, and of course the action potential, but the action potential is always a membrane phenomenon, is not an interior phenomenon, and this is why this slide is really a misnomer here, but we have to live with what people draw in their books. Even the best physiologists, and Laura Lee Sherwood is literally one of the best physiologists around, they also make mistakes when they try to explain things. These are not mistakes. These are, I would call them twists of reality to make them more understandable. Okay. So when you see this green arrow, do not think that the action potential goes that way. The action potential is between the inside and the outside of the membrane, right? It's not something that moves. The action potential is just a difference that establishes and goes away. Am I confusing you? No, really. I want an answer to that, whether you're clear on what an action potential is. Okay, so we're not confused when we see an arrow going from one end to the other. Action potential is not something that goes from one cell to the other by osmosis, okay, or by diffusion. What's that?
Yeah, it doesn't bind to proteins.
That's right. Okay, very good. So, now, we said all that, and we're going to close the chapter on what we know from basic physiology and go into the cardiac function itself by telling you that the main action of the heart is that of a pump. In other words, the heart works and behaves like a pump. Do not take this lightly. And I know it's very mechanistic, but that's what the heart is. It is a piece of machinery. Now, it's not only, I'm saying that it is not only a pump, but it is at that a double pump. There are two pumps that run side by side. Okay? So, in effect, if you could divide the heart straight down the middle, and if you manage to have yourself a few good pacemakers, so you could, because you are going to destroy some of the wiring. If you had two good pacemakers, you could literally separate the heart into two pieces. In fact, there are operations that do that many times when it's necessary, when you have necrosis of part of the wall of the heart due to an infarct or whatever, and you have something like an aneurysm. Then you are forced to separate the pumps. And it's rare, but it is doable. And if it works, then you can still have a very long life. But well, let's not try to talk surgery here. So what the pump does is, first it propels the blood through the systemic circulation. I put that in parentheses because instead of talking to people about getting the blood through the heart as we do right now, through the body, I mean, in vernacular, it is better that we talk about systemic circulation. This is the term you're going to find in your exams. That's how doctors are expected to speak, okay? By the way, to take a 2-minute time out here, I should tell you that part of the chore of becoming a medical doctor is to learn to talk medicalese, okay? It is medicalese means to be able to talk to people so that you impress them with your knowledge of your subject, and they think that God speaks to them. You know, doctors is a species that is very peculiar in that, and this is part of the, I should say, the rationale of being a doctor. Okay, part of what you have to do, maybe some people more than a bigger percentage, let's say, of their day, or a lesser percentage, is always devoted into promoting their image as doctors. Okay, don't laugh about it. It is part of the trade. Okay, this is one of your trade tools. So you have to learn to talk medicalese. Okay, not English, not your native language, those of you that have separate different native languages, but medicalese. Okay, so coming back to our slide, the part of the systemic circulation, or the pump that is involved in the systemic circulation, propels the blood, brings basically oxygen to the tissues, but also other substances. Okay, do not think that oxygen alone is what the organism needs. If you remove all glucose, for example, from the blood, you would die just as fast as if you remove all the oxygen. And not only brings oxygen, but it also has to remove the carbon dioxide and other substances again. But it has to also remove something that we take it for granted and we really do not pay too much attention, and this is heat. Okay, I just say it here, and we are going to repeat it when we talk about the blood, but heat is a major byproduct of everything we do. To give you an idea about how hot you are, or how capable of producing heat you are, I will tell you that between you right now that I see in the room, and I can count from here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 faces, I mean the 6 of you and the gentleman in the back, you produce probably more heat than all the lamps that you have lit. Okay? And think about it very simply. The amount of heat that you produce comes to what we normally try to count. This is calories, right? Because whatever you eat in every day, you dissipate all of it. Otherwise, you would not, you would gain fat. So, if you dissipate, let's say, 2,000 calories, what does 2,000 calories mean? It means that you can raise by 1 degree Celsius 2,000 kilos of water, or by 10 degrees Celsius 200 kilos of water, or by 20 degrees 100 kilos of water, which is about, or 30 degrees 75 kilos of water, which is about what each one of you weighs. So if you don't do anything, in 24 hours your temperature would go from 37 to 67, and next day you'll be boiling. I mean, literally. You'll be totally boiled. So this is how much heat you produce, and all this has to be dissipated, right? So let's not look at heat as just a byproduct. It is a very important part of our regulation. Anyway, this is the part of one pump. The other pump propels the blood through the lungs. This is the pulmonary circulation, okay? And of course it does it so that the carbon dioxide is released in the atmosphere and the stores are replenished with fresh oxygen from the atmosphere so that we can keep doing all these things. By the way, considering heat, it's not dissipated from the lungs, although the old Greek doctors up to medieval times, all the doctors thought that it was the lungs that dissipate heat. Okay? Some of it does dissipate through there, but also through the skin we dissipate a lot of heat also. Anyway, in this diagram you'll see the two separate circuits together. On the left side you have the two circulations, and as you see we have tried to put the heart in such a view so that you don't confuse right and left. You can see that indeed it is two pumps, and they are back to back. In other words, one pushes the blood towards the body and the other pushes the blood towards the lungs. Do not get confused by the colors, because the red shows oxygenated blood and the blue shows non-oxygenated blood. So in effect, if you're going to if you follow the arrows, you'll see that indeed you have two pumps back to back. On the right side, you see a part of a diagram that I had to chop a little bit to fit, but you see how the two chambers of the heart look pretty much in real life. This is of course a schematic here, it's not a picture, it's not a CT scan or anything, but it does show you how the blood moves inside the pump itself. Okay, so on the left side you have the arrows leading into the chamber up on the left side top. There are two arrows that enter. One comes from the superior vena cava and the other from the inferior vena cava. Okay, and this is the right atrium there, and from there through the right atrioventricular valve it goes to the right ventricle, and from there it is pushed out through the left pulmonary artery to the lungs. Okay, and then you see it returning with on the red side with the red arrows. You see it returning from the pulmonary veins into the left atrium, going down through the left atrioventricular valve into the to the left ventricle, and which is really a very, very strong pump, and from there it's pumped throughout the body via the aorta. You can see that, can you?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? I presume that all of you know these things, you just have to be reminded. But literally, are there any questions, really?
No.
Very good. By the way, have you taken time to look through your book about what we talked up to now?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you find that the way that I present these lectures help you with reading the book? Do you have the Christmas tree that I was saying that you have to hang the Christmas balls on?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
A little bit?
Growing.
No, really. I mean, if there is a problem, you should tell me, because this is, I mean, if we don't interact on this, then we don't interact on anything. This is the most important part. Information you can get in the book. The question is whether this type of lecturing is helpful to you.
No, you're clarifying a lot of the concepts in the book. The book isn't as clear.
Is this view held by the others? How about my friend on the right side of the table that rarely speaks to me?
Takashi, what?
Takashi, what's the problem?
Takashi, what's the problem? No, I don't have any problem.
You don't have any. Well, of course, you're a physiologist. You shouldn't have any problem. I have a problem if you're probably the one best in position to catch me when I lie. Anyway, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, what do you have here? The slide is not very good, but I believe it is readable. What it shows you here, it shows you the two circulations, and it puts the heart into some perspective. You see the heart has two different pumps on the horizontal branches of the circuits, and the vertical branches give you all the main systems that are irrigated, so to speak, by blood. You have, of course, the lungs on one side with the pulmonary circulation, and the systemic circulation includes the muscles, the kidneys, the digestive tract, the brain and the nerves and everything else, and of course all the other systemic organs, so that we don't list here each organ separately. I have to caution you about something, and I'll do it now because I will ask you about it later. The lungs are separate from all the other organs, because what you see here, you see the lungs receiving blood that is not oxygenated, correct? Correct or not?
Right.
Now, let me ask you something. Where do you think the lungs get their oxygen from?
From the air?
Breathing.
Breathing.
Major mistake. The lungs, the oxygen they need for their own survival, for their own maintenance, they get it from the systemic circulation also. So, in the other systemic organs, you can also include the lungs. Now, how they do it? Remember, the lungs have two functions. One is to sustain themselves, and the second is to oxygenate the blood. Oxygenating the blood is their function as an organ, is not a survival function for them. So, it is a function that they do not mix. In other words, if you consider that they are handling money for the body, oxygen is money, in our case, value, they do not cheat from the box. They take, they collect it, and they put it to be equally distributed according to need to all the organs, including themselves. They don't cheat. They don't take directly from the air. How they get it? They get it from the circulation. That is, the systemic part, the blood that comes to the systems, to the organs, goes up to the esophageal arteries, and from there the pulmonary arteries come out there are arteries that the bronchial arteries, excuse me, not the pulmonary arteries, the bronchial arteries come out that follow the bronchi all the way down to supply the tissue, the lung tissue, with oxygenated blood. And then they return through the bronchial veins and they go straight into the left ventricle. And we're going to talk about it, but remember that the lungs have a circulation as an organ exactly the same as every other organ. When we talk about in two lessons from now, two sessions, when we get to talk about the respiratory system, you're going to see some interesting things there. These are the small details that are not really details and you can always get caught on, and I really want you to keep these things in mind, okay? So the lungs are treated as every other organ is in terms of circulation, okay? Understood? I see at least one head moving up and down. I take it this is a positive nod. Okay. What was that?
Oh, I was just saying we should raise our hands if you understood. Make it easier.
Okay, no problem. That's very good. Thank you. So, here's another diagram. What you have here is the same diagram as before, only a little bit more elaborated. And you see here on the arterial blood and on the venous blood, you can see where all the blood goes. For example, you find out that at any time the major arteries and everything, they have about 47% of the blood in them, and in the capillaries is 27%, and in the arterioles 19%, and so on and so forth. You can see it on the right side, right? And then you see there veins. What does that mean? Why do we mix arteries with veins? On the right hand side, on the top circle. Why in that pie diagram we have a 7% that we say veins? What does that mean? What does that tell you? This is the total resistance of the, if you notice underneath it says this is the distribution of resistance. And resistance has to do with how much